So why is eBay pushing such choices? I don't know. They claim it's going to be good for everybody, but normally the everybody is eBay and their shareholders or the buyer. I am not happy with this change. I just heard yesterday that they're going to make a change to eBay Motors. And I do sell on eBay Motors, mostly accessories, small parts, and tools. And the change is going to take place in July. And eBay's pushing sellers of parts and accessories. They're going to make us give free returns. Now, I'm not so sure that a mandate like that is going to work out for eBay. It's certainly not going to work out for all sellers. It is going to benefit the buyers, but my experience with this, as I've sold parts 30 years and as I've bought parts since the 70s when I began maintaining my own cars. These days, of course, I have them serviced because they've become so complex. You know, you open the hood of my father's '68 Ford pickup truck, which is one of the vehicles I learned to drive on. I learned to drive on it. It had a 3 on the tree, which, if you're not familiar with that, it was a manual shifter, and the shifter was on the steering column rather than on the floor. But yeah, we all learned to, or most of us learned to drive sticks when we were first learning to drive cars because they were more prolific then, and when you had to adapt, which is what we're going to have to do with this change to eBay Motors. We're going to have to adapt. But I remember I was dating a girl then, and the trucks had bench seats. Nobody had come up with the concept yet of putting sport buckets in a pickup truck, you know, because pickup trucks were for utility work. They were just basic. They didn't have all the bells and whistles of a luxury car. So, like I would do to my tractors in later years, I put a necker knob on that steering wheel. And if you're unfamiliar with a necker knob or a necking knob, it's so that you can drive one-handed while you've got your arm around your girl. There weren't even seat belts in those trucks then, so she'd slide over to the middle of the bench, and you'd have your arm, and you knew you were beginning to get it with that girl if she could shift in sync with you pushing in the clutch with your foot. So you got one hand on the wheel, you got one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake. You shift over to the clutch, and the girl makes the shift. You let out the clutch. You don't even lose a second. You've synchronized your mesh. You're beginning to work together. Yeah, I later put them on my tractors too because it allowed you to steer. Because a lot of the old tractors and the old trucks, they didn't have power assisted steering, so they had big wheels, and you manually, your steering wheel was physically connected to rods and levers that turned the wheels. My newest truck, it's a digital connection. You turn the wheel, it hits some electronic control. Another electronic control receives the signal, the wheels turn. Now, I'm not so keen on that, for one thing, because both of those electronic modules can fail, and you're no longer steering your car. And this is what happens, I think, when eBay makes a change like this. They say it's in response to the market. It's in response to what they've been told in feedback. Buyers of parts and accessories for cars want free returns. Yeah, I'm not surprised they do, because it's probably, maybe next to clothing, one of the single largest areas where people buy parts without knowing the application of those parts. I mean, think of the number of tail light assemblies that fit all the cars that have rolled out of Detroit or come in from overseas in the last 100 years. Well, if they don't do their research, they're ordering a part on the hope that it fits, just like ordering a pair of jeans. I usually wear a certain size, I'll order a certain size, and I have an expectation that they'll fit. Well, they don't. The different manufacturers put different size labels on their products, and they may or may not fit. It's the same way with car parts. So, they're going to order a starter, they're going to order a black box from underneath the hood, and they're not even sure what it does, but they've been told that emissions light is on the dash, and they need one of these, and they don't want to take it to a service center because the fees are up. So they order what they believe they need off of eBay. Could be it fixes it. Could be it doesn't fix it. So they order another part and another part, and all these parts that they ordered and tried to solve their problem with and didn't, they want to send them back. Well, if I sell a new and boxed or new and sealed part on eBay, I want it to stay sold. I don't want to return 29 days later. I don't want to think about whether that guy has damaged that part while he plugged it into his system. Perhaps his failed because there was a bigger problem that broke his part. So he plugs mine in, and I've had this with some very expensive parts, where the owner, the buyer, plugs in the new part I just gave you. So this, I think, is going to be a problem. And the next part has to do with the way eBay is implementing this. As they often do, they'll start the message by saying, we've streamlined the process, we're simplifying it. Well, I've got a pretty simple policy myself about selling automotive parts. No returns. You buy it, you own it. No returns. I don't want to have to worry about whether I'm getting your old part back, or a part that's been damaged, or a part that's been taken out of the packaging, or you didn't send the hardware that went with the part, or you kept the seals because once they're installed, they're not coming back out. So you send me back the main part while keeping the little accessories. But those accessories were inside that box when I sent it. So should I have to accept back an incomplete kit? So they say, we're going to simplify. We're going to put out this new procedure. We're going to mandate it. You're going to follow it, or we're going to hide your listings from buyers. It's a threat. It's a compliance threat. So then you go on a little further down the message, and the exceptions start. Now, I've only listened to the policy spoken once, so I'll have to confirm this before July because it's going to affect me. But I'm pretty sure when I heard it the first time, it was they're going to exclude out-of-the-country sellers who ship parts to American buyers. They're going to exclude American sellers' parts that are shipped out of the country to Canada or wherever. They're going to exclude parts under $10. And it sounds like they're going to exclude used parts. And there were a couple of others. So basically, they use a word like qualifying parts will comply. So now, here's the second issue. Now I've got to stop each and every one of my listings as I'm working my way down the template. And until I learn it, and I'm sure I've got it right, I've got to stop and think about whether the item I'm holding in my hand is a qualifying part. If I normally price it at $11.99, no returns. Do I now price it at $9.79 so that it can stay no returns? Because if I go over $10, then it, same way with it's open box. Well, open box should have to comply with the new rules. So if I simply sell it as used instead of open box, do I work around their new rule? What's more important to me? Selling the part new open box so that I give confidence to the buyer, or selling the part as pre-owned at a lesser value so that I have less hassle? Because that's the way I see returns. Returns are a hassle. people say they're part of the business, and they are. Because just because you say no returns doesn't mean that a buyer can't open an INAD, an item not as described, and eBay will force the return. Sometimes you lose the part. Normally you have to cover the shipping. But eBay is basically saying, we're going to make you sell car parts and free returns. They say they're going to kick back in 50% of the shipping. But if I can ship, let's see, last expensive car part I sold, about $120, and it had one of those little seals on it, a little hologram sticker, and it had an inspection tag that said it had been recertified. So it was a pre-owned part. It had been recertified by a tester somewhere. And because I was able to state that in my listing, that it was re-inspected, recertified, ready to go, it was a computer module. And one of the problems with car parts is a lot of them these days are modules. And you plug them in, and you don't necessarily know exactly what they do. But this one netted me about $100. I think I paid $20 for it. Sold it for $120 minus the fees. But yeah, it was a good item. Well, under this new policy, what do I call that? It's been recertified. Is that new old stock? Is that new open box? Is there a category for refurbished by a inspection facility somewhere? Well, I think that part would be exempt from this new policy, but I'm not sure. Once they get a little further along, probably the day before they implement the policy, they'll put out some more guidance, and we'll be scrambling around. Well, the question though is, would I have paid $20 for that part, even though it was going to bring in $120? Would I have paid $20 to ship that part out and have free returns? I pay the shipping on the listing. Or would I have skipped that part and missed that opportunity? And that's what I don't think eBay gets. For a small businessman who sells some parts in that category, it almost makes you want to say, no more car parts. I'm going to get out of the car part business. And that doesn't really benefit eBay or the buyer in the long term, because I'm trying to think of this in the long term. Does it matter if I get 1 or 2 returns? No. Does it matter if it's a whole category of my business, and if it were a big part of my business, that this is happening? Because I think if they get away with this on eBay Motors, you'll then begin to see it in other categories. It's the same way they trickle in things like their vertical selling program, where you have to send sneakers out for verification. You know, are they fakes? Are they authentic? And then it's handbags, and then it's watches. You know, and they're constantly looking around for things they can instill additional confidence that the buyer will appreciate. They're not as concerned about the seller. They're concerned about the buyer. They want happy buyers. They seem less concerned that they have happy sellers. And this is the kind of policy change that does not make for happy sellers. The sellers who see the rest of us leave that category will be happy. But in general, small businessmen who have to add in additional layers, accept more cost. Yeah, so if I had gotten this computer module back from that first buyer, I couldn't resell it, because I have no way of testing it. I'm not the recertification facility. I don't even have that particular model of car sitting in my driveway. And I wouldn't want to take the time to go unhook it and then install this one that came back, because it could have a fault in it now. So pretty much they just turned my $120 profit into a loss. It's a hunk of scrap metal, because I can't resell it as being certified and ready to go. I can't trust it anymore. So them giving me back half the shipping is not going to make much difference in the loss of $120. So now I'm out $120 plus the original shipping plus half of the return shipping. So yeah, this is not such a good thing. And eBay Motors doesn't just sell car parts. An awful lot of the tools, sockets, ratchets, wrenches, that I put up when I do a sell similar, uh, the category that comes up is eBay Motors. You know, if you're getting a brake tool, or you're getting a ratchet set, something from say Proto, if you have emissions testers, if you have oil change kits, if you've got air filters, those typically come up when you search under eBay Motors. Now, some tools have an alternate, like a socket or a wrench or a screwdriver set. They're not specialty tools. So sometimes there's an optional category of residential home repair. So does that mean I'm going to have to shift those tools out of eBay Motors and intentionally spend time searching for alternate categories that this rule doesn't apply to? And what are they going to do? Is eBay going to start taking down my listings if it can be used on a car or used in the home? And I say use in a home and they think it should be used in a car? Because they do that kind of thing. I sell I sell a lot of pamphlets, tech manuals, owner's manuals, and if I've got a little booklet and it's an owner's manual for say an electric trolling motor for use on a lake with a small boat, and I don't have the motor. I just have the manual. I found it in a free box, or I cleared out a garage and it was there, because usually the manuals get separated from what they operate. Well, in some categories, eBay will let you list the manual, the supporting documentation, in the same category as the item. In other categories, like say I have the operating manual for a fancy coffee maker, or I have the operating manual for a big workout system out in the garage, and it tells you how to assemble it and how to use it, and where to get parts for it and that type of thing. I, as an ex-technician, I believe the manuals should appear in the same general category as the equipment they support. And eBay seems to let their different divisions make this decision up randomly on their own. In one category, like the trolling motor, perhaps there is a subcategory in trolling motors for documentation and support items. You go over to that big workout piece of equipment, and in their category, there's no subcategory. But you're the person who thinks it belongs in there. So you put it in there anyway. And when you're doing the template, at best, a little note will pop up that says, to remind you that media shipment, only certain items can go media. And you say, that's fine. This qualifies for media. It's over 8 pages long. It's a booklet. This is media. So you don't pay particular attention to that pop-up because it doesn't apply. You list the item, you put it in the same category as the equipment. It shows up as an active listing. Shipping selected as media, which is less important these days since ground advantage has become a thing. But it sells. And it's only when you get to printing the label and you go down to the eBay shipping page and media is blocked out. It's not an eligible option for this item. And you're like, what the? Because it was listed media. The buyer selected media as the preferred shipping. eBay let you list it as media. Now they're telling you it can't go media because they blocked out that entire category of item from being a media category, even though I've got a book relating to that category. So now you have to go, all right, now I got to ship it. And usually if it's over about 8 ounces, and a lot of books are, I mean, some of these manuals are 2 pounds. And you've got to now say, well, I can't send it media. I guess I'll send it ground advantage. And that just cost you $2. It cost you $2 because eBay locked it out. They think they know better than the seller. Why they don't trust the seller to make his own decision is beyond me. They trust us enough to list it. They don't trust us enough to decide how to ship it, which is especially interesting because eBay shouldn't care. It's the post office that cares if we violate the rules of media shipping. Post office even has the right to open our packages and look. So why is eBay pushing such choices? I don't know. They claim it's going to be good for everybody, but normally the everybody is eBay and their shareholders or the buyer. I am not happy with this change. This is my not happy face. This is my happy face. See the difference? It's subtle, but it's there. My happy face normally has a little twinkle in my eye. People have told me most of my life, why don't you smile more? All right, there you go. You got to smile. You got to chuckle. Yeah, that was something when I began dating my future wife that my mother told her. Brian was never a child. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I guess I was a more serious person than my cousins and my siblings. So maybe I just took life a little more seriously at a young age. Of course, I did grow up fast. Parents divorced when I was young, relocated a few times, had enough of my situation by 14, picked up a paycheck because I was working a job. I worked a job in order to buy things that I wanted, like, clothes, repair parts for my bicycle. Hopefully eBay's policy won't extend to bicycles. Will extend to motorcycles, though, and probably boats and anything else that's up on eBay Motors. That's the lake this morning. I'm Brian from Cabin Fever Solutions. This is Cabin Fever Reselling that you're watching, and this is Reselling in Retirement.